Hello, and welcome to the Alchemist Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
And I'm KristaLyn.
And we're here together.
It's awesome that we get to play off of each other when we do this. This is my favorite time to record.
I know. It's so fun. You guys get these fun episodes of us every once in a while. So Krista's out here for our writing retreat for the Forgotten Storytellers, which is very timely because this is also a bookend episode.
Yes.
Plus, we're also going to chat a little bit about folk magic, like modern day folk magic, which is your area of study.
It's a special thing. It's great. I love it. Yeah.
And we're recording this actually the day before the equinox. How does the energy feel for you?
I'm actually really liking it. It's very chill. Chill literally and figuratively. So because we're out here in South Lake Tahoe, one of the things I got to do this morning was go out for a walk at around 5:30 in the morning before the sun came up. So I stepped outside of the house that I'm staying at, which is our writing cabin for the Forgotten Storytellers, and it's amazing.
That's so cute.
It was so great to stay in it last night, but I stepped out and I thought I would need a flashlight or something, and I didn't. But also when I looked up, there were all of the stars, and immediately I could find Venus and Jupiter. So I was taking a walk next to this amazing lake under the benefics and just watching Venus as a morning star right now. 6 a.m. The sky was bright, but Venus was still there as the last star standing, as she would be, because she is the morning and the evening star.
Oh,
the original, Vespertine, Serpentine kind of thing. And that like Vespertine during the day, Serpentine during the night. Each planet does have a phase like that, but Venus is so well known because she's so bright when she does that. So if you go outside before sunrise at around 6 a.m., even if the sky is bright, you'll still see her, and it's kind of gorgeous.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And she, of course, is the star that is rising when the sun moves into Libra, creating their mutual reception of the sun being in Venus's sign of Libra and Venus being in the sun's sign of Leo, really kicking off our solstice.
Yeah, our eclipse.
Equinox.
Equinox. Jeez, we didn't get any of the words right.
So it's an equinox because the eclipses are in a couple weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is an equinox. So really cool energy. When you guys listen to this, obviously the equinox will have been almost a week ago. So you'll be feeling a lot of that energy. Well, it will say is looking at the week ahead, from now till when you guys hear this, and a little bit beyond that, a lot of creative energy comes in. It feels like people have almost bursts that come back into the space, which I'm really excited to see because the last couple of weeks have been so heavy and dense and so much processing time and processing energy that everyone's going through. Lots of spiritual activity. Tons of spiritual activity and connections with guides and ahas and all sorts of stuff that way, but also just very, very heavy, very, very dense. Lots of brain fog.
Lots of that. Lots and lots of that. That's perfect. Do it again.
Brain fog and scattered brain mist. I got there. We're fine.
I love it. So to really emphasize that, the first thing I'm looking at when I do look at the transits for the next week is on October 2nd, which I believe is Monday.
I don't know. Not this Monday.
It's not.
It's 2 Mondays
next week is still September.
Yeah.
So October 2nd, Mercury opposes Neptune.
Yeah.
So we're leading up to that the next week. But I'm looking at, why is it like the 3rd of September? And then, because it's going by month. I'm trying to go by week here. And, it goes the whole way. So I'm viewing it on my phone as compared to my computer.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. I'm back. I'm good, you guys. So what we're looking at we already talked about in the last episode, we talked about Monday where Mercury is trine Jupiter. Amazing day for travel, for thinking, for organizing, for all of those things. Fantastic. Venus and Mars are going to form a sextile aspect. So they're kind of like getting by with a little help from their frenemy that day. And then we do have Venus having her third and final square with Uranus on the 29th of September. So that could bring some changes that have really been going on throughout Venus's retrograde and even a little bit before. Will probably have their final peak moment of surprise, this is happening. And then she's in her last couple days of her post shadow from her retrograde. So she's almost done recovering all those degrees. And the very next day, Mercury comes through and trines with Uranus to be like, yeah, change. Huzzah. Then we get that brings us to October 2nd, where Mercury will oppose Neptune to be like, wait, what changed? So am I okay with that? It's the hangover of change.
Hangover. Don't do that. Those watching on the YouTube, you can't see him.
No, you
He's
can't
right behind the chair.
Hi, buddy.
I was like, what are you doing? Don't go out that way. There's books in your way. um, okay, cool. So that's basically, again, that creative energy that I'm kind of seeing come in.
Yeah.
It definitely makes a lot of sense. Especially, it's very interesting that you said the Venus retrograde thing, because I do think that since coming out of retrograde, Venus has been in her power. She has been kicking the abusers of divine feminine energy in the shins. That's how I want to put it, because that is truly how it's gone since then. Like the amount of, even like, obviously it's on a public scale, you can see headlines and those sorts of things, but on a private scale too, like a lot of people are having big realizations about partners or something like that, or previous partners getting vindication, you know, that kind of deal. So there's a lot of that energy going on, and I'm like all about it. I'm like, dang, Venus, like
understanding what you
cut 'em
deserve
down
and not settling for less. Yep. Having
Absolutely.
good standards, not high standards, good standards, and high standards sometimes are the good standards.
Correct. This is true. So let's talk about folk magic. You apply it all the time in your everyday everything. So tell us about it.
I live it. So my history with folk magic really kicked off when I was 10, because I had to have a surgery.
Yeah.
And my family went into church, as you would, and said, pray for Krista. They're having surgery. It's bad. Like, can we get some help? And I ended up on prayer lists 3 different continents, which was really cool. But this lady came out of our church and was like, listen, I do this. What I now understand is a folk magic practice, but she was a nurse at a hospital, and she's like, I'm doing this experimental faith healing energy thing. Can I help? And so she taught me how to meditate. Nice. She taught me how to center, send love to people, feel energy. And then we realized, like, I can feel and see this stuff. Let's do more with it. And she was actually the one that, when I died during surgery, got a ping on the airplane that Krista needs energy. She wrote down the time, sent me energy, and that is the time that I came back. So after that, my mind was like, I have empirical evidence of divinity here. I need to obsess over this for the rest of my life. And now I'm here.
Ta-da.
15 or so certifications and random things later, we're good. And the folk magic practice that I now know she was doing was Bracharai, also colloquially known as powwow, which is the Algonquin language word for healer, which was then kind of put on brachas when people who had already encountered the tribes that use the Algonquin language. I do believe there's more than one. When they encountered brachas, they were like, oh, you're a powwow. And so the Pennsylvania Dutch culture was just like, we powwow. And that's how they call it. I still prefer Bracharai for the obvious reasons. And so it's a folk magic cultural practice based in Christian mysticism. And a lot of different folk magic practices incorporate like nature and all of the things that a pagan practice would. The theon that they use, or even if you want to call it pantheon, is the Holy Trinity. And that's their primary. And it's something I resonate with, working with the energy of Jesus so much. I have my own views of Christianity as a faith and even Christianity as a religion. Check 2 episodes previous to this one to get my full rant on that. So growing up, I was like, listen, I have ways of healing people. I'm going to do that. And I've been able to work with people using folk magic and folk healing, which is the ultimate goal. You know, finding wholeness and completeness is the ultimate goal of folk magic. So it makes it kind of a healing modality. And I've been able to be witness to people conquering cancer and all sorts of things. So I've been doing this since I was 10, is the short TLDR.
So what do you think makes a magic practice folk magic instead of just like witchcraft or other types of magic?
So that's a really great question. And I don't think so another thing I'm doing is trying to understand outside of my own perspective so I can answer questions like this. And one of the books I've been reading that I'll talk more about when we get to the bookend is Small Magics, which is practical secrets from an Appalachian village witch. And it was written by H. Byron Ballard. And her picture is on the back. She even dedicates it. And I really do want to say this because it's beautiful. Her dedication page, if I can actually find it, is basically, there are women past and present who practiced the most profound and authentic magic, but cannot, for myriad reasons, call themselves witch. They are following the work of previous generations as they tend to and reweave their communities with all the skills they own. We owe them more than we can ever repay. This book is for them. And so I think that if we're going to call it witchcraft, or other people call it their lore, or other people will just call it their practice, whatever word works, because there are some practices, even outside of the Christian faith, that don't use the word witch, because to them, witch implies black magic or, malefic magic. Not everybody does. I certainly don't mind if you consider yourself a witch. It's not a term I personally identify with, because I think that's sacred for the people who do identify with it. But they are practicing folk magic and folk healing, especially when they're working to heal or to make whole something.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the addition of culture that you can make it a specific type of folk magic. I think witchcraft, in my perspective, and I'm certainly not the foremost thinker on this.
Oh my gosh, no, I was just asking your opinion. So
yeah, I think a lot of aspects of witchcraft are incorporated into folk magic. And so there's a lot of samesies between them, but the belief system makes it unique. And so that's why the folk in folk magic, it just depends on what folk are you. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it, with my current understanding.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just wanted to like get your thoughts on that, because I know that people vary between like sometimes witches will call themselves like, oh, I'm an Irish folk witch or something like that, which is totally fine. But I'm wondering, like, why wouldn't you just say you're an Irish witch, or but I think I think you're right with the cultural piece, and then also like history piece that backs it up. So
yeah, because you can be an Irish witch and you're just using contemporary witchcraft because you don't have, there might be a sense of lineage, like in Braucherei, it's Pennsylvania Dutch. And people that are not of that lineage or ancestry can absolutely learn Braucherei, because it's going to be really similar to all the other folk magic practices. They just might not use the Psalms as often as their charms, or they might not use, like a lot of folk magic practices will use the Sator square, Sator. And it's just a really nice little protective talisman that you can just write out, and it doesn't require astrology or anything like that. Another differentiation is like small magics, and it's not small by any means, it's very impactful and powerful, is the opposite of high magic, which is the like highbrow, we need to be super specific, we're actually like tuning everything to it magic, which is what astrological magic gets into. It's a specific 2-minute window, and if you get it wrong, you're inviting this horrible mistake that you don't want to mess with. So you have to be like very particular with that. You can use astrology in folk magic, and it's not as particular about it. Waxing moon, increase work, waning moon, decrease work, or plant things that are above the ground during a waxing moon, plant things that grow below the ground during a waning moon, and try to get the moon in a good sign if you can. And it's that easy.
Yeah. I do want to say, if you want to know more about the Sator Square, that was a bonus video of ours a couple months ago now, I guess, for the Patreon. But if you join Patreon, you can still watch all of the bonus videos we did. And this month's bonus video was another Braucherei charm.
Yeah. I actually used the Sator Square when I went in 2 weeks ago. I had a medical procedure, and I hadn't had this particular procedure since I was 14. So I was a little nervous about it.
Yeah.
And the astrology for it was terrible. And I was like, I can't make the astrology better. I can bring protection in with me. So I put a Sator Square in my sock. And that way I was able to
grounded and protected all in one.
Something I could take into the room with me, because they were going to take my purse. They were going to take my, like I wasn't going to have pockets.
Yeah.
So I put it in my sock.
Right. That works.
Yeah. And it did work out a lot better. The astrology still showed up. But it could have been more drastic, and it wasn't. So I like to credit that perhaps my intention of the Sator Square did come through with that.
I do think another component of folk magic that I think is important to pay attention to is it usually involves elements of nature in some way, which is very distinctive, because not all witchcraft does. Like chaos witches don't, sometimes they'll be like, this potato chip meeting is going to be like this, and that's their magic, and that's totally valid and fine too. But I think the element that makes folk magic, especially modern day versions of folk magic, so different and separate, is the fact that there's either physical elements of nature where you're combining herbs, making tinctures or whatever it is there, or remedies, or you name it, or the elemental version of the elements of nature where you're pulling in the energies from that sort of space.
Yeah. And if you're someone who's like, how do I get involved with folk magic? I know nothing about it. That's actually not true. If you cook, you already know a little bit about how folk magic works. Cooking to me is one of the most magical things we do.
Oh yeah.
And we just don't even realize we're doing it. Everything we put together for flavor or for experience, or because this is going to help my stomach feel better. That's like this herb, ginger, will help settle my stomach. I'm going to have a ginger ale. I actually have a ginger ale recipe that I can now make for my husband, who uses ginger ale whenever his stomach gets upset. And he gets upset stomachs frequently. So I found this recipe where I can now make it and be adding intention as I'm putting all the things together. And then, he'll have a magical ginger ale, which will also be a lot healthier than the version he might get with syrups and stuff in it at the store.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever blown out candles on a birthday cake? Ta-da! You've done folk magic.
Have you ever prayed? Ta-da! You've done folk magic.
Yeah.
Because I'm so obsessed with it, the other books you're going to hear about for me today have been also with the central character as a folk magic practitioner. And these books are actually doing a really good job of portraying folk magic. So you can actually just read a fiction story and get a really amazing feel for folk magic. The second one brings in astrology as this, like, it's too complicated for me, but the people who wrote it got their astrology right. There was even one thing in there that I was like, is that possible? And it is. So it was impressive.
Cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's research. It's awesome.
So what is this small magic? You mentioned them briefly. What is small magic versus high magic? And like, how would you use small magic?
So small magic is your everyday life. You can use this all the time. The problem with high magic or, complicated magic or particular magic, like astrological magic is, like we were saying for this cohort, I wasn't able to find a good date where I could say, make this Mercury talisman.
Right.
Because there isn't one.
Right. Because
Saturn is currently opposite Mercury. And so anytime Mercury is in Virgo, exalted and domicile, while Saturn is in Pisces, you can't make a talisman. And that's a bummer until Saturn gets out, which takes 3 years. So you have these really, like, there could be a once in a lifetime election and you have to wait for it. And you might have to wait years for another opportunity to do something. So because it's so high tuned, it's not something you can do as often as you might like, and you have to be really particular. And it's awesome when you can, and you can find ways to work around it. You can kind of like adjust once you have the experience to know where you can adjust, just like with everything else, the rules until you know how to bend them. With this, you can do it every day. Literally, there are things you can incorporate into every aspect of your everyday. And I think this book, Small Magics, does a really good job of explaining it in a way that makes you feel like, oh, I can do this. It's not hard. So the barrier of intimidation isn't there as much.
Yeah. First of all, can we talk about the cover?
I know.
Like, I am obsessed with it.
This is folk magic.
It looks like it's painted on a canvas, even though it's a book cover. And for me, in my artsy brain, I'm just like, that is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So you keep holding it up. I'm like,
the way she writes,
that's just cool.
Like, she is always just saying, like, do what you want to do what works for you. Don't overwhelm yourself. Just make sure you do it. And she'll say, like, you can practice your magic when you're waiting for the light to turn green. You can practice your magic when you want to have a really good interaction with someone, throw a glamour on yourself and that kind of thing. So it's just like very accessible and frequently available.
Which I appreciate as well, which is also what we talk about quite often with psychic stuff and spiritual stuff in general, is it needs to be accessible and available, and you need to be able to incorporate it in your lifestyle instead of making your life around it, because that doesn't work. Or it does work, but then it goes against everything that you're trying to do with this individualized journey.
Or it does work, but you still need to live in the meantime. So what do you do?
Exactly.
And that's where I find, as I'm striking the balance between the high magics and the small magics, which is, certainly not, like I said, a qualification of which one's better. They both have their pitfalls and their amazing parts. But as I incorporate both of them, it's like, well, until I can do this, I'm going to be doing this because I still need to help people. I'm not going to be like, I can only help you in 3 years. That's not right.
And again, any type of magic you want to do is valid. And I don't want to discourage one type or another. Just make sure that you're not culturally appropriating, because with folk magic, there are some folk magics that are closed. And I just want to make sure that we acknowledge that, because there's truly some folk magic practices that are not for you. And the things you will be calling on, at the very base level, for some folk magic stuff, like they ask you to call on different things. Obviously, like with Brought Her Eye, we talked about it's like a Christian folk magic. Other folk magics, though, will call on different entities sort of out there, and those entities are not for you to call on. They will know, and so at the very least, you're going to get some spiritual comeuppance from that sort of elements. But also, your own. You shouldn't be invading other people's space that's sacred in theirs. That being said, there's always a million ways to do one thing. So if there's something you're really drawn to, but it is a closed practice, which a very quick Google search will tell you whether or not it is a closed practice, or a TikTok search even will tell you really quickly if it's a closed practice or not. There's other ways to do it that will not be closed. So just keep that in mind. I just really want to make sure that we just talk about that when we talk about folk magic, because
and even if something
is a lineage thing.
even if something is a closed practice, sometimes they're willing to invite you in. So you can always see. What I would do is say, I'm interested in this. If it is something that is for me, help me find the invitation.
Yes.
And that way you're not like going out there and grabbing at things. You're being respectful, and you're also inviting it into your life in the most aligned way.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And you can always, read books or things about that as well to try to get to that space also. I just want to make sure that no one's going like, yay, folk magic, it's for everybody. It is. It's just, you got to find the right one for you. And you can also do your own sort of witchery and your own magic stuff and read a bunch of different versions of magic and incorporate a bunch of different stuff. And that is fine. That's not something you have to follow the rules of one specific thing in order to be a folk magician. Like there's ways to incorporate it for your own practice as well.
Yeah, it's very adaptable.
That feels more aligned, which is the benefit of doing it today. So talking about folk magic today and how you can use it today, one, we can move it around our lives a lot more because we do have that. And two, we have access to way more types and way more rituals and way more information that's out there that we can actually use and incorporate. Which is helpful.
Also, if you're one of my traditional source text book club members on Patreon, this is one of the books I'm thinking about inviting us to read together. If you're interested, let me know on Patreon.
Yeah.
Probably going to be throwing that out there for them this month.
Yeah. Which would be awesome. Yeah. Super duper cool. Cool. Well, one thing I want to mention before we get into our book and bit, I was written about in the New York Post this week.
Oh my gosh. No, you guys. M was written about in the New York Post. Yeah. I'm sorry. Let me just say that again, because I don't know if you heard me. Our amazing Emily Dexter, was featured in an article in the New York Post. And there's more to come because people are recognizing how incredible you are. And I think you deserve it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for all of that. I'm honestly really honored. It was really incredibly interesting because I interviewed with a reporter a couple weeks ago. And they kind of write on a wire. So it was kind of an article that was going to go to a bunch of news agencies and they kind of would get to choose what they picked up basically, which was so intriguing to me. So I was like, okay, sure. It was a British news agency. And I didn't think I knew it was important that I did it, but I didn't think very much would come of it. So I just looked at it once the article posted and it got picked up by a couple more obscure news sites, but still news sites. And it was on MSN. And I was like, okay, cool. That's super exciting. I'm stoked on that. And just kind of set it to the side. And then a couple days later, my dad's best friend called my dad to inform him that I was in the New York Post and that he had read my article in the New York Post. And my dad was like, what? And so he pulled it up. And that's how I found out about my own article, which I think is really, really funny. I do just want to call a couple things to light about it because I'm really proud of a lot of ways that it's coming up. First of all, the article was written in a beautifully non-biased way. So if you want to check it out, by all means, go for it. They definitely did the whole grabby headline. The whole article is not about me talking to the dead and telling what happens after we die. It's 2 lines of the whole article. That is that. But that's the headline they picked, which got a lot of people to read it, which I'm all about and totally good with. But the interesting thing is it's in the weird but true section. That's the section of the website that it is on. And it has pictures of me. You'll find it easy if you want to read it. But it's there in the weird but true section. And that was the thing that really got me kind of almost emotional because Krista and I have been in this industry a really, really long time. I was giving readings to friends in high school. And that means it's basically been 15 years of being kind of in this industry, give or take a little bit, and not always doing it professionally, of course, but watching the trends over time and going from something that was truly laughed at, even when it was being beneficial to people, thinking about Sylvia Brown being on the daytime talk shows, whatever one it was, Tyra or whatever the fuck it was. I don't even remember. And she'd be there and people would be asking for her help, but they'd still present it in this ooh, this spooky thing. Maybe she's getting it right. Maybe she's not sort of way, even though this very authentic psychic is just being this is what it is. This is what I sense. Getting to a place where the Post will pick up an article about a psychic and post it. And it's received well and people are passionate about it. And I can actually talk about how everyone can be magic and it be helpful to people. That's really what gets me. And the fact that it was in a weird but true section, the fact that it was acknowledged in print that this was a truth, even though it was weird. And I know they're just talking about me claiming that I can do these things and that's the truth of it, but that is really cool. And so I was just really honored by that. So I wanted to talk about it on here so that any of you who have ever felt isolated in this belief know that that is deeply changing and deeply shifting, and it is becoming something that is truly normal. And that's special. Yeah. Also, it was just trippy.
Yeah. When you texted me, I was like, wait, what?
I know. I found out about it from my dad, and I texted Krista and my husband at the same time. I was like, hold on. This is people who need to know about this right this moment.
My gosh.
So
I think your article was a victory for a lot of people, but I'm so glad it was you.
Thank you. I feel really, really honored. And I'm really excited to kind of do some transitioning things with my business and things to kind of, that is very supportive energy that comes in. And I had other people reach out to me to do other articles and things like that. So definitely moving up and stuff, but it's just, it was a really cool experience and not one I ever thought I would have necessarily, unless it was about my writing or something. But for it to just be about these things that I've studied because I'm passionate about it, it was really neat. So
it was cool. Do your thing that you're passionate about. What?
Right. And people like respect it. Like even the reporter I interviewed with, he was so cute because he reminded me of Malcolm, our tour guide from Greece. He was so sweet. Like the way he talked and just his kind of like voice mannerisms, like the things that he would say. I was like, oh, you totally are Malcolm. Like, this is great. So, but it was approached from I'm so curious about this element instead of so tell me what you think you can do element, which I've had interactions with that before too. And I've been like, cool, this is what I do. And they always ask for like, well, what evidence do you have? Or how has this been proven? Or how many people have you worked with? Right. Like that kind of thing. And that was not this at all. Which was really refreshing. I know you've had the same sort of interactions, and it was a really refreshing shift. Genuinely it was, which I appreciate. So I just wanted to call that out there because it's definitely partly because of all of your support. And I'm so thankful and grateful that you are all here and that we get to chat with you every week.
Round of applause for the amazing M. I'm going to clap far away from the mic, but hopefully you can still hear it.
Okay. Thank you. No, I feel really special about it. Cool. What'd you read?
Okay, so
there's my pitch thingy. I guess my 2 cents.
No, I loved it.
Thank you.
So this month I read Portable Magic by Emma Smith. I finished it, which is great. It was helping me research my lecture that I'm going to be giving at Astromagia. Also, anybody who's interested in going to Astromagia, I will be having like a really special promo code that I'm only allowed to give out to mailing list people. It's like only for them. So feel free to join the mailing list and I will be able to give you that code. It'll be in an email soon. And then you can join Astromagia, which is really about bringing astrological magic into creative expression in the modern day. And so I'm really excited about it. My lecture is going to be how ancient texts are not as intimidating as they seem. And I'm going to be teaching people like how to read them, how to interpret them, how to like math problem them out, and then how to avoid pitfalls and traps that might sometimes be in there. So I read Portable Magic, which is like a history of books and their readers, which is really cool. It's very interesting. So many fun facts. Loved it. And then I also read the Cunning Man series. And the Cunning Man series is the one I was talking about, where it's a really well done interpretation of folk magic practices. It's by DJ Butler and Aaron Michael Ritchie. The first book is The Cunning Man. The second book is The Jupiter Knife. They are entertaining. They are set in the early 20th century, but they're also really good at like acknowledging certain issues culturally that were going on. The main character, his name is Hiram, but he has an adopted son who is from a Native American tribe, and they acknowledge, and he's so sassy. It's really great. Whenever someone mistreats him, he either calls them out, or you see like the tolerance he has to have. And they acknowledge a lot of things that in modern times we're starting to recognize. But they like, there's nothing in there that I was like, oh, you were a dude writing this and you like, were still a dude about it. It's very well done. The research is well done. The astrology checks. So I highly recommend it. Fantastic. It's a really great introduction and immersion into folk magic and just the way you can think about it. And, you know, the quandary of how do you deal with, is there a God and that kind of stuff? Are you stuffy for being strict on it or whatever? So I really enjoy that too, as someone who's constantly pursuing the definition of truth in that space. So those were my fiction reads. And then of course, we've already talked about Small Magics by H. Byron Ballard. Really good. I picked this up at a local holistic shop, which is incredible near me. It's called Mama Luna's. If you're ever in the Henrico, Richmond, Virginia area, go there, support them. They are incredible. So that's what I read this month. How about you?
Fantastic. I read, so I started The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, and then I took a little bit of a pause in the middle and I read Assistant to the Villain. Oh, I loaned it to a friend already. I was like, I'll show it to you. It should be next to me. It's not, because I gave it to a friend. I want to talk about Assistant to the Villain really quick, and then I'll talk about The Way of Kings, because I honestly think they were both really, really awesome. Assistant to the Villain is a TikTok book. So when I say a TikTok book, it started because the author started a series on TikTok and then was like, you should make a book out of it. And then she wrote a book on that. And I'm always so wary because some of the worst books I've read in my entire life are because of that. And so I was like, ugh, but I watched her since she had like 5,000 followers or something. And like, I just followed her because she was a book talk creator to this point, and she got like an official book deal. And I was like, all right, I'll read this book. You know, the movie of Ella Enchanted?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
I'm reading it.
The whole book feels that way, with some beautiful, divine, feminine, like SA survivor vindication at the end. It's super cool. Oh, I just knocked my desk.
Is that by Hannah Nicole
It is.
Mayer?
Yeah,
okay.
It is by Hannah Nicole Mayer. It's a really quick read. It is written a little like you can tell she hasn't written a book before. Like this is definitely like a first book she's written. There's a little bit of like immaturity in the writing. Not like the writing is immature. It's not, but more like she'll introduce something and then 2 scenes later that thing comes in. And then she'll introduce something and 2 scenes later that thing comes into play kind of thing. Like it's not like stuff that's built at the very beginning and then at the very end that thing that you built in the very beginning comes in and you're like, oh my goodness. It's not so much that, if that makes sense. It's more kind of chunked out. It's really amazing. I really liked it a lot. I had a lot of fun with it. I'd say it's probably a 3.5 or 4-star read for me.
Nice.
It was really fun. And it is, I believe, a trilogy is what she's doing with it, or a duology. I'm not 100% sure. But it's worth it. It was really good and really easy to read. Also, just basically the same way with the Ella Enchanted movie. It's, you know, she's the personal assistant to the villain, and there's an HR person that works under the villain, and there's the dragon trainer that works under the villain, and like they all have like, yeah, and there's, instead of coffee, it's witch's brew, and like she has to give it to everybody around the office, and like it's just really cute, and the filing systems, and there's pixies and a little frog who can't speak but holds up signs to say what he needs to say, and like it's just really cute. It's adorable, so I highly recommend it. I will say check the trigger warnings. That's there. I think you'll be fine, but
thank you.
Check the trigger warnings just in case for you. But it's really sweet. It's done really sweet, and I really appreciate and like a lot of the characters, and yeah, I think they address some of the problems of the world pretty cool, so that was nice. So I took a break of reading some of the most mature writing I've ever read in my entire life to go to some kind of immature writing, to go back to read some of the most incredible writing I have truly ever read in my whole life, because it's Brandon Sanderson. And he is a wizard that connects to other portals and dimensions and transcripts them into our own. That's the only way I can explain it.
Yeah.
He's invented like 7 different languages in these books, and races and cultures, and even the plant systems are different. Like there's nothing about these fantasy worlds in the Way of Kings that are really like our own. I will say it's really cool though. The magic system is based off of crystals.
Yeah.
Cool. And stormlight. So basically there's these things called high storms, and if you leave your crystals out in a high storm, they get charged with stormlight, and those things basically power all of the electricity and everything in the world. It's really cool. There's also these things called Sprin, which are basically nature spirits or kind of thought form spirits that come from humans' perception or understanding of a specific thing. So there's everything from like anger Sprin to wind Sprin to honor Sprin to, it's really cool, and they all look different, and they all, you know, come from the land in some capacity, and are kind of always around, and creativity Sprin and rain Sprin. I mean, it's everything. And it's a really cool, it's really, really cool. I will say it is very complex, but in his classic Brandon Sanderson style, he will tell you about something, and then when it comes back into play, he'll kind of reiterate it. It's not like, oh, don't you remember that thing? Cool, we can move on. It's more like this, and then this is how they operated that thing, and then you're reminded again, and this is how they operated it. So you really get really well built into the story. It's a big book. It's a 48-hour long audiobook, which I finished this month. And the second book is also 48 hours long. West and I are both reading it together. I finished The Way of Kings. It is so incredibly worth it. It is the world building book of the series, because I've already started the second book, Words of Radiance, I think is what it is. And it's already like way faster. More things are happening. You're immediately getting answers on things. So like the first book is very much a character introduction, world building. It's very necessary. And I'm glad that I read it, even though it kind of got a little bit slow in the middle. By the end of it, it was really good. And there's a found family in the book that I am so incredibly obsessed with. It's so cute. So yeah, that's what I read this month. 48 hours of reading.
Love it.
2 whole days of my life reading that book.
Well spent.
Well spent. It's phenomenal writing as per usual. But I really love the magic system in this one. I really love the magic system in this one. So it's very cool. Also very, very complicated political structures that he has built for multiple different cities and multiple different elements of the world, like their own unique political structures and paradigms, which is just so fascinating to my brain. But yeah. Cool. Well, that's kind of it. Again, Forgotten Storyteller pitches are open.
I was just going to say, we're here for the retreat. We are so focused on the clients that we have in Forgotten Storytellers. They are always magical. We make sure that the groups are supportive for each other, like as we're calling the people in. So if you feel like now's the time, follow that instinct. We can explore it with you. We actually do a whole interview thing. It's fun. It's no stress. But we make sure that it feels aligned for everybody. Yeah. And that's great.
Yeah, Forgotten Storyteller stuff it's our favorite. We love it so much. And we already have a couple people in this cohort that have already signed up. And honestly, it's going to be a really cool group. Like a really, really cool group. So if you already joined, hello, hi, we're so happy you're coming. But anyone else who would like to participate, please submit your pitch because we'd love that. Yeah. More fun announcements, probably like next week or the week after, honestly.
We're finalizing some details today. So
of a couple different things. So going to announce that stuff coming up really soon. I think everyone's going to be really stoked on it too. Yeah. There's that. I guess that's kind of it. I guess that's rounding out. I'm like, is there anything else? I don't think there is.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to actually get this on time today.
Or I can just on purpose mess it up.
All right. Ready? We're still going to count it down though. Okay. So we hope that you take all of this energy with the eclipse and you
with the equinox.
1, 2, 3. Go make some magic.
Hey, that was good.
Oh my gosh. You guys went on the same time. How'd you do that?